Here we're going to be taking a look at, themes in colonial conflict, because you can look at a lot of the different wars that occurred between the English side and the Indigenous side, and there's a lot of similarities that are ultimately going to play out. So we're going to start on the Atlantic coast with the Pequot War, and this is the first major conflict between the English and Native Americans, because it's really sustained in scope and scale. It's pretty big for its time. Now, the English had traded with the Pequot, who controlled the coast, and thus they controlled the supply of wampum. And wampum was something that was accepted as the legal currency in New England at the time. Now, the English desired more land, so they allied with the Mohegan and Narragansett tribes, and they are enemies of the Pequot. Now, all of this is going to culminate in an attack on about 400 Pequot at their main village on the Mystic River. It's referred to, unfortunately, as the Massacre at Mystic because only 5 will survive. And even the Mohegan and Narragansett were just shocked at the brutality of the English. Now, only about half of the 3,000 total Pequots survived the war, and those that did are going to be subjects of the Mohegan and Narragansett, and some even assimilate into these societies. Now, part of the issue is that there was no collective indigenous identity. Everyone identifies by their tribe, their clan, their nation. There was a Narragansett sachem named Miantinomi, and he had fought against the Pequot. He proposed an alliance about 5 years after this war ended, but it went nowhere. So we start with the Pequot War. Now, fast forward about a generation. Metacomet was a Wampanoag sachem, and he was the son of Massasoit. Massasoit was very helpful to the English when they first arrived to establish the Plymouth colony. Now, the Wampanoag, his people, had enjoyed relative peace with the English, but in 1675, 3 Wampanoag were tried and hanged by Plymouth colonists for allegedly murdering an indigenous individual who they thought was a spy. Now, warriors began to loot and burn settlements, and neutral bands like the Narragansett are going to be drawn into the conflict. Now, English settlers assumed that Metacomet was the overall leader, but each band actually fought under their own leaders. This is really a pattern that the English are going to have of identifying a singular individual that they believe is the leader, and frankly, they'll name the war after this person. Now, the natives are going to use new flintlock muskets that they had acquired through their European trading partners. Up to this point, the English somewhat had technological superiority. Not so. It's going to be a level playing field. And their enemies, the Wampanoag. The Wampanoag are going to attack entire towns, kill women and children, same as the English. Now, about 1/3 of all natives in New England are going to ally with the English, so that's where it turns into something like a civil war. And ultimately, the English win because they enlisted the help of the Mohawk. And the Mohawk are part of the Haudenosaunee in what's now upstate New York. Exceptionally powerful allies. They are individuals that nobody wants to go against. And plus, King Philip's forces are going to run out of supplies, because the war eliminates access to colonial trading partners. 1 out of every 4 indigenous individuals in New England will die during this war. It's just absolutely destructive. So now we go from New England a little bit further south. At about the same time as King Philip's War, another war breaks out between the Susquehannock and frontier settlers. Now, the Susquehannock are very good at hit-and-run tactics, so the settlers demand justice. The Virginia governor didn't really do much in the eyes of the frontier settlers to kind of stave off native attacks. And he also didn't want to upset those who were friendly to the English. Now, Nathaniel Bacon is a little bit wealthier, but he's kind of, he emerges as the leader of these frontier English. So because his forces are simply going to attack anyone who's native, even those friendly to the English, the governor, who you see in that fancy coat on the left side of the screen, William Berkeley, is going to be furious at him. So Bacon and his men are actually going to attack and burn Jamestown, and unfortunately then he'll die of dysentery and the movement will fall apart. But this shows that you have common planters, these frontier planters. They're not happy with the favoritism of the governor and giving out land to basically whoever he wants. And, you have this group of settlers in Virginia who are kind of trying to recreate the society they had in England. So after this, the crown is in, the king will take a more direct role in the colony. And finally, in the American Southwest, where Spain is in control, you have what sometimes is called the Great Southwest Revolt or the Pueblo Revolt, where you have all of these different communities, dozens of settlements, known as pueblos. They are going to rise up in revolt against the Spanish, and quite frankly, to put it simply, the Spanish are brutally oppressive. They try and control the Pueblo way of life. They brutally suppress traditional Pueblo faith and religion. One of the individuals who emerges as the symbolic leader of this war, an individual named Pope, was actually punished for continuing to practice his traditional faith. And for a time, this revolt was successful, where the Pueblo are going to expel the Spanish from their land. Now, the Spanish are going to return and reassert their control, but they are going to allow the Pueblo to maintain their way of life. So in the English world, it's really conflicts over land, whereas in the Spanish world, the conflicts that occur are more about keeping this way of life that has sustained these individuals for centuries, if not thousands of years.